Cool. So, welcome everyone. Hope you all had a good last couple of days or day and a half, actually, right? Since we've last met. I've gotten some emails from some students regarding different situations that are coming up that are affecting your attendance, slash affecting your um, performance, or just kind of limiting you in any kind of a way. And it ranges from academics, responsibilities, maybe in other classes, to issues dealing with the pandemic, as well as we have these fires that are going up and down the state in various vicinities that are affecting power at different times. So this is affecting accessibility. It's affecting a lot of different facets of our day-to-day lives. So we're trying to do everything that we can on our end of it. Um, So if you have questions, if you can't attend, you can continue to email us. The TAs and I are doing our best to stay on top of emails and any questions that you all might have. The other thing to note is that because some students are being affected, that works on our side as well. Apparently, Gaucho Space, or the Gaucho Cast, the subsidiary, right? It's, the people that house our videos. There's some kind of an issue with the translating of the videos from there to our course website. So it's been a couple of videos that it's not uploading, and everything's fine on my end of it, but it's just a matter of them needing to catch up. There's some things going on across campus that could potentially be affecting this. But either way, long story short, I want y'all to know that the videos are being recorded. If need be, I'll find a different method for uploading them, possibly on YouTube, and creating like a private channel just for you all to view the videos. But um, as it stands, we use the current platform for security um, of our university materials and these lectures. So we're still trying to figure out that technology. So just kind of bear with us. Sophie, you had a question.
Well, I was actually just about to ask this, that I noticed that on the on Goucher Cast, like it seems like we've only got recordings from August 6th and August 8th, and it's August 20th. Uh, so would you say, when do you think we'll be able to have access to them?
I don't know. I've been uploading them. The website isn't receiving them and transferring them. So it's them that need to fix the issue. I'm not in charge of that. I couldn't give you a date. That's why I'm saying if it's not done in the next day or so, I'm gonna have to find a different platform, such as YouTube or some other video housing site that I can use for our class in a private setting. Does that help?
Mhm.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from you all? Let's see. How many of you found the financial aid presentation on Tuesday useful? Few of you? Okay, today we're actually going to continue the conversation on financial aid. One thing is to get a presentation and to receive information. And then there's a whole other side of things when it's up to you to interpret and put into application, right? And so even though we had a great presentation that dealt with a lot of information, the other side of things is the personal research that you've done, right? So there are some personal financial aid programs you might be familiar with that either were not brought up in the financial aid presentation, or they're just not a topic that was discussed right within our campus. It could be like extramural funding, like scholarships, that kind of stuff that I think you all were talking about. Um, that could be helpful towards the whole class understanding as well, right? So what I want to do today is I want to be able to break us up into some breakout rooms so you can discuss what some of these financial aid situations could be, right? So I'm going to have something simple from, what is financial aid? I actually have the questions here for you on chat, so I'm just going to go ahead and post them, right? What is financial aid? Who can apply for the FAFSA? What types of aids are offered / available to you? And are you currently looking for scholarships, right? And so these questions are intended to help guide your group discussion in breakout rooms. And why I'm trying to get you to begin this conversation out loud with your group is to understand the possibility of there being other financial options out there for you, right? So even though we have professionals and people that prepare these presentations for us, sometimes there's a little bit of hustle within our smaller peer groups where somebody knows of a certain scholarship website, right? That maybe because it's not affiliated to UCSB or the UC system, we don't discuss, right? And so this presents for us an excellent opportunity to share those resources and have conversations in a more communal type of a way. So what I would like to do is I'd like to be able to break us up into these breakout rooms as I've done in the past, and then have you answer these questions amongst yourself. And just like as I have in the past, I'll go ahead and pop into each breakout room at any given point and just say hello and see how y'all are doing. Trying to find, I'm sorry, I'm arranging your breakout rooms right now. So I'm just trying to verify that you have a TA in each of these rooms. So if you give me one quick second, okay, found it. Alrighty. So now we have a TA in each of the groups. Make sure that you'll begin this discussion. I'll pop in and ask a couple other questions, and then we'll see how that goes in about 15 minutes. We'll circle back in group, have a larger class discussion. Alrighty, see you in a bit.
An unsubsidized loan, they don't pick up that interest while you're in school. So this is what she talked about on Tuesday, where it's accruing interest as soon as you take that loan. And the principal is basically growing while you're in school. So that's why she recommended that it might be smart if you're taking an unsubsidized loan to try to pay the interest month to month while you're still in school, so you don't get to the end and have a bigger bill than maybe you expected. So student loans is one type of financial aid. What else do we maybe talk about on Tuesday, or do we know about?
There were the PLUS loans.
What was that?
The PLUS loans.
What was that PLUS loan?
The Parent Plus, where I forget if it's the parents that could get the loan so that they could help pay for the school.
So you have these three different loans, right? You have subsidized, unsub, and private. And part of your loans that get offered from the government are going to be subsidized or unsubsidized. Private loans are from a third-party bank like Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of those. The Parent Plus is offered from the federal government, so it's a part of your initial aid package. That one requires a credit review of your parents when they apply, so they can apply for the loan, but they have their credit ran, and a number of things. If you don't get approved for it based off of credit, they can ask for a cosigner, and then if the cosigner passes their credit check, then those funds are released. Your parent is responsible for paying them back, but so is the cosigner, right? So that's something that to know if you're in that pickle. The other way to go about it, as was mentioned, is if you have to have your parents apply to have their credit denied to apply for the third party private loan. Some banks won't take it from you if you don't attempt to apply from the federal government first. So that's something to understand about taking the Parent Plus loan. To convert it to you is going to require you having to go to another bank outside of the university and ask for that amount that was offered to you on your FAFSA. That same amount you can ask for from the Plus loan through the third party bank. And then you get into an agreement with them. You would then fall into the credit check. So everything changes because now, since it's a private bank, it's a private banking system, they set up the rules and they can change the rates, they can change the terms. And that's just something that we don't often understand as well, because our terms from the federal government prior to this administration didn't change very often, right? And so those terms are more long term. So if you think of where we're at right now with our terms on loans, like at 5.75, for some loans, 3.75 for others, those are super low rates that you're not going to get at a bank. And if you do, you're not going to get it for as long of a time as the federal government would allow for you to pay it back. So there's a lot of little unique situations about the private loan business, but your Parent Plus loans are essentially an option for you to also take out that money for yourself in a private side. There's a lot of different ways of applying for it, in other words.
So you mentioned the FAFSA. That's the next question, right? Has everyone here filled out a FAFSA or don't know what that even is or has questions about it? I was gonna say raise your hand, but I guess a lot of you are playing. But has anyone not filled out a FAFSA? Don't know what it is. All right, I guess we can go ahead, Mario.
No, I was gonna say, who can apply for it? Like, who applies for the FAFSA? It's a loaded question.
I think any student can apply for FAFSA.
Every student can apply for it, right? And sometimes we get the understanding that the FAFSA is only for students that are in, quote, need-based situations, where their family's estimated family contribution won't be enough to help assist their student expenses, right? And that's not the truth, because your situation can change at any moment. And as long as you have a FAFSA on file, right? Let's say you go from that situation to a situation where the income has changed on your family side, and now they can't provide as much as they could before. You take that documentation to the financial aid office, and they change your financial aid packet based off of that information after they review it. But you need to have a FAFSA on file in order for you to do that, right? So there's always this just in case scenario, but sometimes even people with enough capital to pay for classes, for tuition expenses, all that on their own, they'll choose to have their kids, hey, you want something, you got to go take loans out, right? So that's their financial aid access, right? Financial aid, as you mentioned, is loans. Different people take out loans for different reasons, right? And so as long as it's for student expense or something that you can negotiate under student terms, there's no issue, with you having that money. Matter of fact, they're not going to check your receipts, what you paid for it, right? But what you want to understand is just having a FAFSA on file can help you in case you run into any of these weird life-altering situations as we're going through right now in this pandemic, right? A lot of people and employment is questionable right now. So just having a FAFSA on file can shorten the process by 2 to 3 weeks for you. If you go from not needing aid right now to, hey, my situation changed, that's 2 or 3 weeks less of processing time, right? That's 2 or 3 weeks less of stress on how to negotiate with the debtors, with the people that you have to pay back, all that stuff. Um, it's just good to understand that you have those options. There's also programs like scholarships on campus that require for you to have a FAFSA on file. Whether you're receiving grants from it or you're on loans or whatever, they just want to see a FAFSA on file so that then they can include that scholarship into your packet, right? Otherwise, it might not be able to pay you out. And so it's just always encouraged upon all students in all situations to file their FAFSA. And if you're in a situation where you require grants assistance because you're need based, make sure you file by March 2nd, because that's the cutoff deadline for grants to be eligible to receive state or federal grants.
Yeah, the bottom line there is just to do it, right? Even as a grad student, I still fill out the FAFSA every year. I don't take loans, but I need to fill out the FAFSA for any sort of grants that I get from the school. So it's smart just to fill it out. And if you pay your taxes, it takes like 5 minutes to do on the internet. So it's super, super easy.
Make sure you don't pay for it,
You shouldn't
because
have to pay.
there's a FAFSA.com, and people get confused. The dude from FAFSA.com is a former, long time ago, director of UCSB's financial aid office. So we'll come across students all the time that are like, I paid $40 to have my FAFSA filled out. And you end up realizing that it was through this mechanism. So be careful. It's free. It's in the name of the application.
Yeah, it's definitely free. And like I said, if you pay your taxes, it pretty much auto fills out pretty much all of it for you. So it should be pretty straightforward. It doesn't cost any money.
I'm
What
gonna go ahead
types?
and swap out. I'm sorry
No worries.
for interrupting.
Next question says, what types of aid are offered or available?
little bit to sign in, and then I was like, oh no, and then I would just call them. They're like, oh yeah, you just forgot to register for your units for the quarter that's coming up, right? And I was just like, oh, okay, cool. After that minor freak out, and then I just registered, and then it kicked in like the next day. So that's something to be cognizant of, right? That's a great question, Sam. Awesome. Any other kind of general questions you have so far? No? Well, that's okay. If you do, you can either ask me or call the financial billing people. Again, they're really nice. They're there for you, right? Okay. And moving on to the rest of the questions, what type of aids are you being offered right now, either personally or generally you want to speak about for your own self and your award letters?
All right, I'll go. So I was offered grants, subsidized loans, and unsubsidized loans. The only thing I guess that, well, maybe not the only thing, I was not offered work study. So that's what I know of.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. I think, you being able to share this with the rest of the class is really helpful, just because they can feel comfortable about talking about this topic as well, and it might relate to them. Yeah. Are you interested in work study?
I mean, I am. I'm interested in any way to pay for anything that I can. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, I've just tried to explore all the options.
Work study, you can always ask the financial aid office for a student request for review.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
And so what they'll do is they'll review your financial aid application all over again.
Mm-hmm.
They might ask you for some additional verifying documents. But what that does is it allows for them to put a more direct lens on your specific case. Sometimes there's some general terms that you'll fall under, but when you look at your finances specifically, they differ. And if you don't account for that difference, then that person gets generalized. And this is just something that happens from how the federal government translates it to how they communicate it to the university. And so oftentimes what you can do is ask for this request for review. And, as you're talking to the advisor, you can let them know that you're interested in trying to see if you qualify for work study. That's your main reason for trying to get the review done. Because sometimes it's a gray line. It's a real gray area um, on how they award you work study. And in my understanding is if you're receiving stuff like um, federal grants or state grants, like especially the Cal grant, there
Mm-hmm.
should be there should be work study awarded to you as well. Sometimes there's an oversight in the system, or to be honest with you, right now it's the summertime, and so I know that they're still adopting and changing all of your guys' award letters too. So sometimes you can start the communication, and the most likely response is, we're working on it. We're constantly updating. We're constantly doing this, and it's just a process. There's 20,000 plus students, undergraduates, right, that are going through some kind of financial aid packaging. And when you think about a couple dozen people in charge of operating all of your files, it takes some negotiating. And that's why I'm always saying that the best advocate for a student is themselves, because you're the one that understands your specific necessities. If your financial aid isn't rolling in like you think it should, and something seems off, then go in there and start asking questions. And I mentioned this before, and I mention it over and over. um, our livelihood as professionals depend on students. So if students have questions, if students have needs, these are ongoing discussions we should be having as a campus community, right? Whether it's academic or student services related, and sometimes they merge. We can't disconnect the two. So continue to reach out. And if I were you, Chris, I would just touch base with the financial aid advisor and be like, hey, I'm just curious why I wasn't awarded work study, and just see
Yeah.
how that ball rolls for you.
Yeah, actually, I reached out to them. I mean, like I said, I'm an older student, so I was like in a career. So with coming to school and COVID, the money that I made last year is definitely not what I'm making this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know, like, how, is there a way I could appeal? And they told me about the appeal process, because it's a whole different ballgame for me now. So
Yeah, everything that you're awarded right now as part of your award letter is based off of last year's incomes, right? And so that's why I made it a point for her to specifically state that as long as you communicate with them, they're able to change your financial aid at any given point during the school year. So if your financial situation um, gets worse, right? Like from here to January, February, you go in there, you let them know, and there might be some things that they could make more beneficial to your financial aid, right? Or you might qualify for programs that you didn't before, like CalFresh. That in itself is like close to $200 a month, free groceries. So, I mean, just definitely communicate. And I'm glad they gave you that information, because it's a long process sometimes.
yeah, it seems like it's gonna be, but I was able to get it started. So, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. And like Mario was saying, you can always contact them, and if they don't respond to you, don't be afraid to give them a little nudge. They just have so much applications, things coming in and out, that sometimes there is oversight. So don't be afraid to say, oh, I sent this email 3 or 4 years ago. I'm just touching base with where the status of my application is now, or my review. And that's the same with your academic advisor, anyone who you're contacting. Feel free to give them a little nudge if you haven't gotten a response. Okay, don't be afraid to do that. And I know from what I've heard, when I've contacted financial services in the past, is that sometimes students don't fully use their work study, or they don't even use their work study, and that opens the doors for other kind of applications for something like you, Chris, right? So where there's like a kind of on the line application process.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else want to kind of share what their financial award letter or what they're kind of receiving looks like at the moment, or have any questions about that?
Yeah, I actually met with Angie from EOP, and she helped me understand my award letter better. So I got a UCSB scholarship along with a health insurance grant. And this last year I worked full-time, but this year my hours are going to reduce. So she said as soon as that happens to reach out to financial aid so they can make the change.
And all they need is some kind of a formal letter from your employer that you can provide them with that they can then verify afterwards. So they can call them up and be like, is this true? And then, you know, you don't want to get caught in a lie. So it's definitely one of those situations that I didn't know when I was coming into UCSB. Like even as a transfer student, all the stuff that I had to do to research to get to a university, right? Like there were some things like that that I didn't know. And when I started working at financial aid, you know, maybe 3-4 months in, we hit our recession in 2007, 2008. So people started losing jobs, started losing homes, and students started coming in left and right. And this is when I started finding out that everybody's aid is adaptable as their situations are as well. So, you know, you had students that with the Office of Financial Aid and the government estimating, you know, you're going to pay about $700-800 a month of rent. And the reality is you might be paying more like $900 to $1,200 of rent on your own on the individual side of things, right? So if you're sharing with 3-4 other people, it might be less. But if you were looking at it for yourself, right, $900 is $300 short every month. Over a 9-month period, that's $2,700 short that you're going to be in your financial aid packet. That how are you going to come up with those $3,000 on your own, right? You have all these hours you need to commit to school, to being a scholar. Because even if you work, you still have to be a student before you can get a student employment. There's all these things that are attached to it, right? And you're negotiating your schedule, you're adjusting, transitioning from semester to quarter. So you want to make sure that one of the biggest stresses isn't as big of a stress as it could be, right? And so staying on top of your financial aid is one of those ways of tackling that that feeling of overwhelmingness, right? Like, man, I'm not gonna get by. I don't have enough for rent this month, which means I don't have enough for groceries because you know you start picking which bills to pay. You start picking whether or not your appetite is large enough, you know, to justify eating. And those are the situations you shouldn't be caught in, right? You shouldn't be caught in choosing whether or not you can have a roof over your head, food insecurity. Those things should not be um, out of a pandemic. Those situations are not situations you imagine for college students to begin with, right? And one thing we've actually found out in the last 4 or 5 years is that depending on your university, between Cal States and UCs, you have anywhere from 10 to 20% homelessness amongst the student population, right? That was before the pandemic. And so you're looking at 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 5 students, right? On the low end of things. That's, you know, it's daunting once you bring in the pandemic. So I really wanted you all to have this conversation so that you can begin engaging this financial aid research for yourself. Because if you're not informed now, by the beginning of the fall quarter, it might be too late. Like you're going to be competing with a bunch of other people for the same monies. You're going to be asking a bunch of questions, and you know there's ways to kind of prepare yourself up, even with just common knowledge stuff, so that later on you're not waiting a day or two for an email response from someone that's like a one-liner, right? Like there's some things that if you advocate for yourself, man, you'd be surprised how much you'll learn about the process. Then next thing you know, you could be employed, and then you're learning more, and it turns into like a larger career choice thing. Um, you know, financial aid and EOP are some of those places on campus that, as you mentioned, Lily, they don't have to serve that direct department, but EOP is so knowledgeable across student services that they can talk to you about career services, financial aid, counseling, AS, right? Because they collaborate and train with all these different departments. And that's one of the wonderful things about student services. And unless you know that they all interact with each other, you know, you're compartmentalizing everywhere, and you know, you kind of miss the sight of it all. right? Like you're staring at the trees when you could take a step back and see the forest. And that's kind of what I'm trying to have you all experience through these weeks of interacting with our guests. So I'm actually going to let you all go in your conversation. I don't want to take over too much, but I just wanted to drop in, say hello, drop a little bit of information, stir the pot.
Drop some knowledge. Okay.
It should pay off, man. I worked all those hours in the summer in that cramped phone room. All the funk of people's feet. I'm just paying it forward. I'll see y'all in a minute. I'm gonna head to the last breakout room.
Cool. Right. And another thing I just kind of want to point out is that creating these.
Hey, welcome.
What up? How y'all doing?
Good.
Good. We were just talking about work study.
The wonderful world of financial aid. Yay!
Shut your mouth.
Hey, I gave those presentations, man. Like I said, I give her mad props for making them much more relatable than I did. Like I didn't have that much animation in my PowerPoint. So I was like, at least you're doing something with popping in some colors, you know, like, but it was cool because it was personal, right? Like she was able to say, look, I was an undergrad. These are some of my personal situations. Like, let's be honest, Stephanie, how many of us go around telling each other how much we're in debt in college?
You don't want to know.
But I bet if I was only in debt $2-3 grand, right, it'd be a lot easier for me to communicate. But at the same time, it's more relatable to someone who's like, hey, I just need 2 or 3 grand. Because not everybody needs the long-term kind of loan payout, right, to help subsidize the rest of their student expenses. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, right? Like school has become much more of a business in the last few decades that most of our students that are in the UC that are on need-based aid funding, at some point or another, also take out loans, right? So if you're giving out grants to students who are in need, you almost always understand that they're also going to pull out loans at some point in the year, which is why I can at least appreciate our Office of Financial Aid reinforcing that if they do offer you loans, they always start off with the most beneficial to you, and then they work their way back. So if you have a bunch of scholarships and grants coming in, you might not even be offered any loans. But if you are offered some loans, they're going to start off with like the federal subsidized loan. And then they'll add the federal unsubsidized loan for you. The last loan they'll include in that packet is a Parent Plus loan, right? And so the Parent Plus loan is kind of a beast in itself, right? Because it requires your parent to have to go through a credit check. We're in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of people's credit has changed in these months because of a lack of employment, because of lack of income stability, right? So it could have been that last year, if your parents would have ran that credit check, or 6 months ago, they'd have been approved. But now, you know, even in running that credit, what does that mean for your parents? How is that detrimental to their credit score down the road if, you know, you're in a tight spot, right? So all these things are personal considerations, but we want you to understand that if you need it, it's there, right? So if you're in that kind of a corner, let's say your parents can't take out the loan, there's the option of co-signing, but then you also have the opportunity to take that yourself and ask for it at a third party. It doesn't work as beneficially to you, but again, these are all options. And for me, I'm not about telling you go the private bank route, because those are variable terms, and because it's private, they can do whatever they want at any point. We've been seeing this the last few years between Wells Fargo and B of A. And that's just mentioning like 2 of the major branches. So this happens all the time, and we want to protect students. That's why it's the last loan that's offered to you, right? So and I was talking to a student in the last breakout room who said that they were offered all these scholarships, but they weren't offered, grants and scholarships, but they didn't get work study. So I just suggested to them that just like any other financial aid situation, sometimes it's variable and it changes from one day to the next, right? So if you reach out to your advisor and you're like, hey, just wondering why I didn't qualify for work study, even though I'm getting the Cal grant or whatever federal grants, right? Then they might be able to tell you that there might be some specific reason that initially kept you from receiving it, but there's an appeal process that you can go through so that they can try to qualify you for it, right? So there's a student request for review, and then later on, if your budget isn't enough for you, there's a student request for budget increase. And these are all tools that you can use if you're in that situation, right? Now, I don't want to cast any judgment. I don't want to um, criticize anybody. If you need to take out this money for yourself, for your family responsibilities, it's there for that. This isn't one of those situations where um, pride will take care of everything. You know, as proud as I am, one of the things that would be most hurtful for me is if I was too proud and somehow there's a collateral effect to my children or my wife, right? Like if I'm not taking care of some end of it and I oversee that opportunity or I just choose not to take it. And this has happened to me in the past, you know, and so I've had to negotiate which bill am I paying this month. Okay, I'll just tell the folks from Ford Motor Company that their car payment is going to be late for a couple months, and then negotiate that route with them. But who wants to go through that stress, right? When I could have easily applied for some of this funding that would have been available, I just, you know, too proud. And you go around that block not too many times, right? I'm just trying to help you shorten that walk, whatever it is. You know, if it's one time around the block you got to go, I want you to go halfway around the block, come across me and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go right back. Because, you know, there's no need to kind of fall into some of these situations. We have anywhere from 10 to 20% of our student populations across CSUs and UCs are homeless, right? So our students are homeless, 1 in 10 or 1 in 5, depending on the university you attend. And that in itself is not a situation our students should be in, right? So we're in a pandemic, and sometimes we try to normalize our day to day under this umbrella of like, oh, you know, I'm good, things are going to turn around. Um, the person in me wants to be positive, wants to say, you know, things are going to get better, but then I also need to prepare just in case they don't, right? You're prepared in case things go to the left. And this is just one of those situations. You get loans offered to you, doesn't mean you have to take them out, right? You have to apply for them, then you have to sign them out, go through an entrance exam. It takes 3 different phases for you to get your loan paid out. So just because it's there doesn't mean you're gonna receive it. And even then, if you do receive it and then opt that you don't need it, you can always pay it back to the BART office, and they'll take your money and then readjust your loan so that it shows that it got paid off. Right? There's all these little situations within loans that this conversation can just, you know, it could take days, it could take weeks. So the egghead in me wants to like analyze and maybe overanalyze some of these funding streams, but I also want you all to be practical and strategic, right? So all this critical thinking and looking at how you can develop more beneficial models of funding, that comes once you obtain the first round of information, right? And that round of information is in your own financial aid award letter. So if any of you have any questions about it, then you could reach out to your advisor, and then you can ask them just, you know, why am I not getting work study? Why am I only offered these loans? Because it could just be a misinterpretation in the system, right? And the last thing you want is to be limited in your options as you're having to navigate these like ever-changing times. I'll shut up now.
Thank you.
No problem. Keep having people jump out, so I'm connecting them in. I'm gonna jump out of your breakout room, let y'all finish your conversation for a few more, and then we'll come back together in a bit. All right? Good stuff. So like we got most everyone joining back. Sorry, dealing with some ants right now. If yeah, it's summer. They're out. They just keep randomly popping up.
Does
What was
Santa
that?
Barbara have like a big ant problem, or because
Yeah.
I have ant problems in my apartment as well.
Oh yeah, and we since family housing, we were West Campus family housing. We live in staff housing now. This is brand new housing, so it's not like, you know, the ants just find a way. You find a way of living amongst them. You know, I put a small little garden outside in my patio a couple weeks ago, and I diverted some of the ants away from the building by our patio door. So now they're going out that way, and you know, little tricks I guess you'll find out. I didn't plan on that happening. I just realized that like a few days ago. That's why I'm kind of like, why do I have all these ants all over? I'll end up finding out something I left behind. All right, too much side talk. You guys are talking too much. How did that financial aid conversation go? Do y'all think it was of some help for you to have a smaller group discussion?
Yeah,
All right, so I want to hear something from your groups. What was something that you learned though, or you gained from that conversation that you had in your smaller groups?
where to apply to jobs on Handshake, on the Handshake website. I didn't know that existed before.
Yeah, and those jobs, I think I mentioned this before, but if not, those jobs are offered year round. There's some jobs that pop up, like I know the Office of Financial Aid themselves hire peers in the fall quarter. So right after October is usually when their application starts. And then people like EOP hire in the spring, right? But they're both work study employment opportunities. So it's one of those things where if you don't find a job fall quarter, there's something to be bound to pop up winter or spring. Even as people are employed, there are peers that leave. You know, they find different employment opportunities, or they need to focus more on their studies, whatever the case might be. Just constantly keep checking Handshake. You know, it's a wonderful tool for you to be able to just go to one stop and like shop at all the different work study opportunities on campus.
Yeah.
All right, what else did we learn?
Another thing I learned is probably the amount of scholarships that are available out there, and just to go ahead and freely apply, and then hopefully I get lucky.
Yeah, man, there's a I have an interesting story actually. The first scholarship I ever received was intended for a female student. And the crazy thing was that um, they had to qualify some students somehow categorically, or else that scholarship would be lost the following year. So somehow the administration negotiated with the people of the scholarship to say, hey, we've got 3 candidates. They fit all the criteria except the specific one. And I always found it interesting, right, that they made that that adjustment and said, hey, you know what, we'll work with you. And I've come to find out that happens quite a bit, that people get pushed into a situation where if the funding is not used, then it gets lost in the subsequent years. So they'll find ways of negotiating the specific demographic that the funding is applied for. Sometimes you receive money in a general category, and you as the company create a specific demographic that you're going to send that money to, right? If the money can be rolled back into that general category again, that's where you get the negotiation. But you don't know that unless you start asking. So it was just one of those random things where at my community college, everyone that fit a certain GPA that was about to transfer was put on a list of scholarships that they would be promoted for automatically. And it just it popped up, and I was on a short list of people that were remaining that were scholarship eligible. So you just never know. Like there's there's scholarships of people that are left-handed from like Alameda County, and people that are right-handed from San Bernardino County. There's like all these super specific type of scholarships that I'm impressed at by how creative people can be, right? But at the same time, I'm also impressed at the fact that students are always teaching me, about all these different platforms to go to as well, right? Because just as creative as people are, it takes a creative individual to do the research to find it. Right? Anna, you have a question?
Yeah, that's really true because I've gotten a couple of scholarships that were for like nursing majors, but because I took like anatomy and then even though I'm a social major, I was able to get those scholarships. And then like I got a scholarship for taking an astronomy class too one time. So like finding those like random ones, it really does help. It's helped me out a lot. Even being able to go to UCSB. So not having to worry about that right now.
And one of the cool things about joining a student org is that student orgs are like your pipeline to some of these discipline or major specific scholarships too. Because when you get into an org, right, sometimes they set up study hours as a requirement, right? And these are the conversations that you'll have during study hours, right? Like, what's the next stage for funding to promote your research, right? So you have a great idea. How do you get it funded? Because all ideas are great, but they become phenomenal once you have the right funding for it. And then that's what sets the stream for where research is done. So sometimes, again, you have to be creative. If it's for academic tuition funding, if it's for research funding, these are all separate categories. And sometimes we think, oh, we're only eligible for academic scholarships. There's all sorts of different scholarships out there that you can also apply for. And again, I encourage you to join student orgs or to continue to at least talk to the student services professionals that you have, like Angie. I think somebody mentioned it in the breakout room, but they reached out to Angie from EOP, and they were able to get some assistance with their ward letter and understanding it. And so, this is one of the examples that we can use on how collaborative our student affairs departments are across campus, right? They work with each other so much that you go to EOP and you'll find out about career services, AS, financial aid, so on and so forth. So just make sure that when you're asking questions, you understand there's a connectedness rather than a separation. Like people are always working with each other, right? There's always a funding stream amongst these departments to be negotiated. Let's see, what else did you all learn? Let's have one more person share.
Well, we in our room we learned about work study specifically, and we kind of broke that down a lot into what jobs would qualify. We learned that really anything through Handshake would qualify, I believe,
Yeah.
and also that's kind of like a general fund, and they pay out of that fund so that the employer doesn't have to, but then they will also keep employing you after that fund runs out.
Yeah, so it's one of those cool things where with work study, you get paid 50% from your work study and 50% from your employer. So I always tell students your $2,000 in work study is actually $4,000 in your bank, because what ends up happening is the employer ends up paying out their $2,000 worth as well, because that's their half of your employment, right? So if you run out of your work study, that's exactly what happened, And a lot of the times the employees, because they've taken a 50% cut, can then afford to keep you that last quarter off their own payroll. So it works towards the university budget, towards those employers. But one of the cool things is that some employments also offer you the ability to convert loans into additional work study. So if you work for the Office of Financial Aid, that was one of the things that they offer is if you end up working past your work study amount, they'll convert loans towards more work study so you can continue to work for them, right? And so it's possible, man, that you can end up with far less loans offered to you, but you also have to understand that the trade-off is additional work hours, right? So you're gonna have to work either way. It's a good opportunity for you to get university, institutional training. If you find out where the money flows, if you find out how the money flows, every single department on campus is gonna want you. Whether it's just for general conversation or for development purposes, if you can find how the money flows, if you can gain that knowledge, it just takes you to the next stage. And I'm not saying that, in a way to like gas you up or say, whatever the university wants me to say. I'm saying this as a real life tool that you can take that transfers anywhere you go, right? If you know how funding works, then you could go to Berkeley, to UCLA, to Northwestern, to Chicago, anywhere. We drop you and you can at least start digging for and finding your funding streams, right? And that resourcefulness, excuse me, that resourcefulness is often what employers seek, right? So if you're able to find funding to keep yourself funded as a professor candidate, that's a great skill that they want. They want somebody that can continue to promote research through these funding streams, right? And so, again, it's not just something to know for your own personal tuition understanding, right? But rather something to understand that financial aid turns into other terms down your academic road, but it still is financial aid. So you just understand it under different jargon. You're talking about extramural funding instead of scholarships, right? You're talking about stipends instead of grants, or grants, remain, but it's just a conversation that you should constantly be having, right? That maybe the person in us, the human that hasn't quite become the academic, is like, nah, I don't want to have that conversation. That stuff is boring, right? Like, I just want to Netflix and chill. Cool, you got every opportunity to do so. My advice is that maybe you put down the remote after a couple episodes and then scan through, give yourself 15, 20 minutes, right? We use that method. And then we take another break. So you're just taking a little bit of information at a time, but as you're digging around, you'd be surprised how much knowledge you'll gain. And it's just one of those tools. I'm telling you, you can't turn away that kind of a knowledge. You can't deny it once you find it. It's very easy for you to be able to continue to find those sources. See chat. Oh, I'm just seeing that y'all are chatting with each other. I was trying to see if there were questions from. I'm glad that you all are answering that. Yes. One of the things to know about your aid, right, is like, so something else, glasses, right? So if you need reading glasses, prescription types of glasses of any sort, there's part of what you pay into your tuition fees actually goes towards that side of medical, and you can get a good chunk of your glasses paid for, if not all of them, if you go through UCSB Student Health. And there's funding available for anything that goes above your budget, right? So EOP can talk to you about that. And the funds might switch from financial aid office to EOP. But why I bring that up is because sometimes you have these real student needs that like you just can't budget for, that they pop up out of nowhere. And like, how much does a good pair of reading glasses go for? right? That's $100-200 depending on your needs. Maybe I'm undershooting it. I don't really use reading glasses often, but I know that they're not cheap. I know that I took advantage of this program before I left grad school because I was like, my vision is getting worse on my way out, and I should at least have glasses to prepare me for the real world, right? It was just like one of those, and I just want y'all to have those casual conversations with each other. You know, year two is gonna pop up real quick, and when that pops up, you know, this is where that information starts to really set in, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm ready for the transformation from undergrad to grad school, right? So, you know, I know that sometimes they're not, like I said, the most appealing information or presentations that we can give you, but we try to make them as relatable and personable as possible, especially with that alumni factor, right? And so continue to reach out to these folks and find out what kind of one of the resources that you have as they develop. I just saw a question from Montserrat. Would you just go get an eye exam there and get? So we do have a doctor here, an eye doctor, that you can visit to get an eye test done. But if you're away from campus right during this time, my assumption is that it works the same way. That you go visit, because even though we have that option, I know that we've used Costco like as our eye exam place, and then they shoot the prescription over to the university, and then because you're a student, the way that you get billed by purchasing your lenses and glasses and all that, right? You get either reimbursed if you buy them outside, or the university bills you through BARC if you go through our university um, eye exam place. So it's your aid will kick in, but it's, as I mentioned, it'll either be reimbursed, or if you do it on campus, like through our department, then it gets paid straight through.
Okay, that's really interesting to know because I didn't know that you could do that, get more aid for things that you wouldn't be able to like afford outside. You know, that's good to know. Thank you.
It used to be more limited, but we're used to our students living here. And so now with the changes, you know, we have to adapt. And because of the types of health insurance that we subscribe to as students, it's it's covered. You know, so all we have to do is have the proper documentation to submit to the university. And I mean, there were times where I had to go to a specialist and then submit my billing from the specialist to the university's student health office, and then they would reimburse me. But it always made sense. Then we also have that student medical emergency relief fund, right? And so this is a medical fund, right? There's a medical situation, your eyeglasses, if you can't afford them, even with whatever aid you're getting um, from the university, there's the SMRF aid, right? Student Medical Emergency Relief Fund. And you know, they'll pay for teeth, for your glasses, for medical exams, for anything that's medically related to you while you're registered as a student at UCSB. So you know, again, it's important to just know that you have those options, because you don't know, between now and a year, you're skateboarding on campus, right? But you hit one of those little bumps in the road and you go flying, and now you're left with a hospital bill that you didn't plan on, right? And that's a way that you can tap into these different options on campus, and it relieves so much stress from the day to day. See, I'm gonna check. Alrighty, so next week, I think we have a next week. I think we have a guest speaker coming. I can't remember if it's Mika or Carissa, but I've posted it on the website so that you all know who we're going to be having in. I'm going to try to get this video situation figured out. It was brought up to my attention, and it's just unacceptable for you all. So again, if you don't see the video up on Gaucho Space, I'll email you a private YouTube channel link where you can view these lecture videos. All right. Okay. So if you all have any questions, make sure you email us. Keep in touch. Stay safe. Wear your masks. Social distancing, please. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Sweet. Great. I went ahead and
Yeah, good.
put up grades for 1 and 2, just FYI.